Welcome to this episode of Implementing Best Practice in Business. We're here to help you and your organisation understand and implement global best practice to help you face the business challenges of today. Join me, Richard Pharro, CEO of APMG International, in talking to leaders and practitioners who have applied these frameworks and practices to boost their productivity. They're here, willing to share their knowledge and experience to help you learn from them so you can do the same to make you more competitive in today's market. So today my guest is Melanie Franklin, someone I've known for a number of years. Melanie's an educator, a coach, a writer, and probably above all at the moment a social media pundit in the world of programs, projects and predominantly change management. Welcome, Melanie.
Thank you.
Melanie, would you like to say a little bit more about yourself and how you came to be in this role as seen as a global authority on change management?
I think in part it's because I've done so many of the roles. I started as a business analyst. I moved into being a project manager, then a program manager, program director, heading up project and program management around the world. I moved into change management because my clients wanted to realize the investment from their solutions. So we have the project management world that develops the solutions. My clients then wanted to understand how they might actually get the benefit, how they implement it. So probably about 15 years ago, I moved much more into change management. And in the last 10 years, it's been an agile approach. So agile change, because I think there's been such a move towards a more agile approach in organizations generally. Business agility is still the phrase that I'm asked about the most, and agile transformations in whatever guise that is probably the most common transformational change taking place in organizations today.
Man, that's fascinating. A few years ago, I don't know whether it was 2, 3 or 4, I think you conceived the idea of the Agile Change Agent. Now, who are these people? Do they exist or do you have to grow them? What do they do when you find them? What do they actually do? How do they help an organization?
Change agents are those people within the business, whether they're in a supervisory or line management role, or they are your go-to stars within your department, who, when you are taking on a new way of working, they're the people that want to volunteer to help create it. They are the ones that are best placed to persuade their colleagues to get on board with it and to support their colleagues as they adjust to it. Now, that change agent network has always been a staple of change and transformation. We've always had to build out those networks within the organization to take our changes forward. But so many organizations are now trying to do change in a sort of agile way, an iterative, evolving way, that what I wanted to do was provide a course that explains some of the basics of change management, but also gave people a very simple, intuitive journey planner for how a change actually runs. Because if you're not a change management expert and you're working in finance, HR, operations, but you've got to lead yourself and your colleagues through that change, how do you do that? So those change agents have always been around, but we've targeted a specific course and certification for them to help them build their understanding, their capability. And I always think the certification is so important for giving people that credibility, personal credibility. I've got this, but also that credibility they can share with others that inspires confidence to follow their lead.
That's very interesting. I think the certification is quite an important part of everyone's sort of personal development, because it actually say that you know what you're doing. But most certifications are theoretical, and clearly your agile change agents, I assume, are pretty practical people. But if I'm an organization and I've got project managers and I've got change managers, what's the role between change management and project management? Are change initiatives just special projects? Are projects delivered within a change initiative within the business?
Well, I'm going to pick up on 2 points there. First of all, coming back to your point about certification, I think that what I'm most proud about with the Agile Change Agent certification is that you can sit the exam, but you've been on a course that has taught you how to do things, not just passed on knowledge. So it's not that you just know something, but also you have built up an ability to do things that you couldn't do before, and you can still walk away with a certification that says, I have studied this. So I'm really pleased that we've married those two together. When it comes to the relationship between project and change management will always be the partner of project management. Projects create the solutions. Change management readies the organisation for using the solution. If we don't ready the organisation, then we've created something, we've invested in it, but nobody's using it, nobody's changed how they work, and so the organisation doesn't get increased efficiencies. It doesn't get people adding value and doing the things that they really need them to do.
You mentioned earlier that a number of your clients are on transformation. So is there a difference between a change project and a transformational project? And
Yeah.
where does agility fit into that? So how would you describe the difference between a change management project, if I can use that word, and a transformational management project?
I think for me, it's always been a simple divide. A change project is that it's a project where there is perhaps a smaller scale vision, a smaller scale capability that we're going to build. So it might be a small scale sort of tweak to something, an improvement of some kind. Whereas transformation is much bigger. It is more of a program that we want a wider capability within the organisation. I often think of it as the transformations are turning an oil tanker 90 degrees, because we are changing direction quite significantly and we're trying to take everybody with us. Whereas an individual change project might be changing a specific process, a specific product or service. But the transformation is often much more cultural, and it has many projects within it, some of which are building tangible changes, some of which are building new processes and new ways of thinking and prioritising. So transformation is that bigger wrapper that goes around multiple projects and change initiatives.
But are all these things merging? Are we in a world now where business agility is a topic that people talk about? More organizations want to be agile. People want to move faster. People talk about digital transformation or transformation. You talk about cultural change. Yet we then have best practice. We have tribes of change managers and tribes of project managers and tribes of program managers. Are all these things merging, or are they really distinct and different? What's your forecast over the next sort of few years about best practice in projects, programs, and change?
Well, I think first of all that we will continue to collaborate. In fact, I think that will accelerate more. I can't affect change unless I build excellent relationships with those that are developing the tangible changes, the project teams. So my ability to build productive relationships and build a partnership with them. Equally, those within the project world who are tasked with creating something on time, on budget, and to the required level of capability can't ensure that what they're creating is implemented unless they work in partnership with me. I think that partnership actually extends through to the PMO if we take the word portfolio as portfolio management office. So I think there's a collaboration there. So I think, first of all, a collaborative skill set is absolutely essential for how we work together. But I think that also means that we have to be prepared to perhaps understand each other's worlds a little bit more. So if you're a change manager, building a productive relationship with project management might involve understanding a lot more about Agile than you currently do, because the projects are likely to be delivered in an Agile way. Equally, if you're a project manager, appreciating all of the activities that lead people into a new behaviour, a new way of working, is incredibly helpful when you're building your own plan. because it enables you to see all of those extra activities. They might not be your responsibility, but they affect the timing of what you do, and they affect the willingness of those in the business to take part in testing, for example. So having that wider context, I think, is important. So collaboration, yes. Partnership is another word I'd use when you talked about merging together. But I think that also means that when we're doing our own personal development, we have to challenge ourselves and say, should I learn something that takes me a little bit out of my own specialism so I can see the world from a different view?
Melanie, you didn't mention stakeholders. Where do stakeholders fit in this? Because if you're looking at collaboration and if you're looking at engagement and bringing all these skills together, now, do you have to put a lot of effort in at the front of one of these transformational projects or programs to make sure you've got the stakeholders on board? And is it easy, if you're making such a fundamental change to an organization, to identify those stakeholders?
In the Agile Change Management book that I wrote, and the Agile Change Agent certification is based on that, I put in a very simple community map. And I use the word community very deliberately as a way of identifying our stakeholders, because I think we are affecting a community and we need a community to support us as we try to make change happen. Of course, we continue to identify members of that community the further we go into our initiatives. But for me, very simply, there are two parts of that community. There are people who are affected by the change, who we need to work differently. Because if they don't adjust what they're doing, then we won't have changed. And then there's a much smaller group who are looking at it from a sponsorship, a governance, a decision-making point of view. Both parties need to understand the agile approach, because that agile approach means that there'll be wave after wave of change. There's a higher volume of change. It might be smaller in scale, but it's coming at you across a timeline. If you are one of the people that has to adjust how you work, you want to be able to see yourself in that timeline and work out when you're going to be impacted. If you're one of the smaller proportion of people who are governing that change, you need to understand that agile approach to really understand where the key decision points are and when you are needed to support that change particularly. But I think that's stakeholders. We need to be looking at that from a community point of view. They are the community of those who are affected by change.
And that must be a huge challenge. I mean, with the clients that you work with, if you're running a transformational program, then those people who are going to be affected, most people always assume that if it's a digital project, it means there's going to be job losses. It means the robots are going to come in and take over. So there's a whole amount of sort of emotional energy involved in making sure people stay on board, that they're aligned to it, and that everybody is dealt with fairly, professionally, and with some empathy. Is that the role of the change agent? Is that the role of the change manager? Who carries that burden of making sure people are comfortable with what's happening and that everybody will be treated with fairness and empathy?
I think it's certainly the accountability of anybody who is overseeing and managing the change. It's the change agents. It's those colleagues within the business who are actually delivering, to a large extent, that empathy. They are delivering that psychological support as people adjust to new ways of working. Whether or not it's a job loss situation, or whether it's they haven't lost their job within the organisation, but they've lost the job they've been doing for some period of time, the job that they're comfortable with. I think they are equally as emotionally testing. And it is certainly those change agents. The more people who understand about how to lead people, including themselves, through change, who understand the psychological background, who understand what those change management activities are, the greater the chance we have of building an environment that is supportive and feels safe. And in that way, we remove one of the biggest barriers to making change happen.
Talking of barriers to making change happen, I have a view that project sponsors don't pull their weight a lot of the time. There are some brilliant sponsors, but there's lots of sponsors that are sponsors in name only. if you had to give advice to, 3 pieces of advice to somebody who was sponsoring or leading their first change initiative, what advice would you give them?
I think the most important thing, if you are in a sponsor position, is that you need to champion the change. So you need always to be speaking positively about it. And one throwaway line where you perhaps denigrated the change, you've made fun of it, will always be remembered. And all the positive things you say after that might not be. So I think it's maintaining that championing of the change that is absolutely crucial.
We can think of a couple of senior business leaders that have made a couple of throwaway lines. We won't mention any names here. And as you say, it collapsed overnight.
You never recover, I think, from those throwaway lines. And I've always said when I'm coaching people, if you do want to if you're in a bad mood and you want to say anything negative, go and shut yourself in a cupboard somewhere, but don't let anybody hear you say it. Get it out of your system and then carry on. I think from a sponsor point of view, that's the first thing. When I'm working with senior leaders, one of the things that I coach them with most is that, remember, you are further through the transition to new ways of working than everybody else. You've been dealing with this behind the scenes, deciding upon it, scoping it for months. You've just announced it to all of your people and it's brand new to them. And then you turn around a week later and go, well, why isn't it done yet? Well, they're still adjusting. So that's the second thing, is that shift in time. And I think people understanding that it will take people a while to come up the curve. And the third piece of advice I always give, therefore, is that just because you've said it, it doesn't mean it's done yet. So you need to keep saying it. Storytelling. You need to keep talking about why it's so valuable. Leaders can provide a level of a sense of purpose, a sense of meaning, a reason for the change that others perhaps might not be able to convey. That's what I need my sponsors to deliver. I want that passionate belief that we're doing the right thing, and that it's worthwhile, and that all the heavy lifting that we have to do and all the hard work is going to be beneficial. It's taking us to a better place. So keeping them focused on that.
But Melanie, how do you close the circle of, you've got to give people time to come up to speed and understand it. You've got to remain positive. You've got to wait for the results to arrive. We live in an agile world. Do it, try it, implement it, fail fast, pivot, move on. How do you reconcile those two different, I think, competing ideas of what agility means in business, and particularly in some development activities, with the need to allow people to understand, come to terms with it, and execute it over a longer period of time? Isn't there a conflict there?
I think there's less of a conflict if, when you are working in a more agile way, you focus on the earliest delivery being something that genuinely solves problems for people in the business, that actually makes things better. It can be quite a small thing, but if it makes things better, and then they know that the next change is coming, which is another solution that will take away some of their stress, then I think that the two marry up very well, because whilst they're still adjusting to the wider change and that shift to, I'll be doing a different job, meanwhile, we're starting to change things around them that annoy them anyway, that make their job difficult to do. So let's make sure that when we're working in an agile way, what we prioritize is the greatest business value first. Because if we can do that, then we take away stress, and we take away a wider resistance to that longer term change.
Now, I don't want you to name anybody, but have you had a client that simply doesn't get it? They don't understand the importance of a structured approach to change, the importance of the empathy necessary to take their staff with them, and they think it's just a gung-ho approach and everyone's going to fall in line and follow me. Have you come across those individuals in your consulting role?
Yes, but they don't stay confused for long. I think one of the reasons is that I've had several CEOs this year already who've talked about their ambition and all the things that they want to do for the organisation. But I've also been able to show them that unless they invest in that capability for managing change, unless they support their staff, build that network of change agents who can lead people through the transition, then they are at significant risk of operational chaos, because people will be trying to work out how to work differently while still doing a business as usual role. And we know that it's the business as usual role that will suffer. And that leads to reputational issues with customers in that we're just not delivering. But even if you're not in a front-facing client role, that chaos may actually extend back up into the supply chain. And where we are right now, actually our supply chains are hard won, and we can't afford to lose our suppliers. So that reputational risk, I think, is there. So I think there is something about change management is fluffy. Change management's just a bit of communication. I think we have to challenge that head on and say, no, it delivers significant business value. And the longer term business value is that it creates for you within your organization a capacity to take on new ways of working, which match your ambition in the boardroom. And that ambition is your competitive advantage. You can have all the ideas in the world that you like, but if you can't implement them, you will not get the value back. You won't get that return on investment. So this is not fluffy. This is hard-nosed business approach.
I couldn't agree with you more. I think execution is at the heart of it. No matter what people say, no matter what the plans are, no matter what they promise, it's all about execution and delivery on the day. Melanie, it's great talking to you. I mean, I think we could talk for hours, but I don't think I know your program doesn't allow that. You've got lots of things to do. You're a very, very busy person. Thanks for finding the time today to have a chat, and look forward to catching up in person once the pandemic is behind us. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Richard.
Thank you for listening. We're always keen to hear your feedback and suggestions for future episodes. You can find all the information in the show notes below. Please visit apmg-international.com to find out more about our accredited training and the certifications that support them that are related to the topics discussed in this series. I hope you've enjoyed today, and I look forward to you joining future episodes while we continue our exploration into best practice and the benefits it brings to global business. Thank you.